We're going to Toronto now to join TSN's Dave Hodge. And I don't mind saying, Dave, long time, big fan here of yours. Sorry to interrupt you with the phone going off there. I'm a little nervous doing this interview, by the way.
Great time.
But let me ask you this, Dave. Simplest, broadest question. How's your life in pandemic times the last 9 months? How have you made out?
As patiently as possible, which translates to impatiently. It's been difficult, but other people have had it worse. I live with a wife and a relatively new puppy. That was a difficult decision at my age, at our age. COVID had something to do with it. We're glad we have him to keep us occupied. Otherwise, we'd need a boxing ring in the house somewhere.
Oh, believe me, I know. Wait, my wife's been working in the house, out of the house, and we still might put on the sparring gloves here at some point. But, Dave, listen, I know you heard me mention your history with the CFL. We all know what it is. I want to start there, if you don't mind, because I know you have a deep love for the league. How's it sit with you that they canceled 2020, and how do you see them coming out of this, given what we know about where we're going?
Well, first of all, you're quite right that my affection for the CFL was greater when I was doing games than it is now and in recent years. That's obvious, but I was no fan of a league that didn't exist in 2020. I don't know that they had a choice. We can debate that forever. Better probably to debate what happens in 2021. I think they are determined to do something, and I understand that. I don't know if I'll like what they do. I don't know if the fans will like it, but the league has to do something, just as all the other leagues have had to do things that weren't acceptable in normal circumstances, but necessary in these. I think there's some opportunity for the CFL to use the absence of a 2020 season as some sort of a positive in terms of a return in 2021. Let's welcome back a league that we have loved for generations, and let's welcome it back the right way. I think the right way is with what I would call some drastic changes to what fans would see, whether they're scattered throughout the stadiums or whether they're watching on television. Much the same as the NHL, I think, was forced to do what it did entering the 2005 season after the lockout. I'm talking about removing the red line in terms of offside passes and the shootout. I think you have to give fans a reason to be intrigued, to be interested. They may not like the changes that you see, but I think it would be a help to bring the league back with more interest than there would be otherwise. Now, your next question is, and I don't have an answer for this either. I'll try a few if you want, but how do you change the CFL to make it more attractive? I mean, part of their deliberations about what to do, they have to talk about how to do it.
Well, the thing is, the product, I feel, is tremendous. Randy Ambrosie came in, tweaked a few small things, and I love the games. I don't think the product needs to change at all. And what I do think, Dave, is next year we're not going to have fans in stands at all. So the CFL's playing, it's going to have to be on television and find a way to make money that way. But would you agree or disagree that the product currently and the players are amazing? It's just not enough Canadians know who they are.
Well, that would be one change I would try to address. I've said for years that player movement in the CFL is a detriment. I think identification with certain players in certain cities used to be very important in this league. Players would walk around the streets of any city and be immediately recognized And now, I know I'm not speaking for Regina, obviously, but in a lot of CFL cities, that would not be the case. Ask anybody who follows sports to name a CFL quarterback, and Bo Levi Mitchell will be the answer 95% of the time. One of the reasons is that he's a star and a good quarterback and has had great success. The other is that he's a Calgary Stampeder and he has been nothing else. So I think you can change the import rule to give a team more imports, as it were, if they keep certain players for a certain length of time. It gives them an advantage on the field, but it also encourages them to keep their rosters as intact as possible. It's going to be nice for the players to have that leverage in contract talks, but I think it would be important if the CFL could do that. I think encouraging somehow the development of Canadian quarterbacks would be a good idea. I know people have been talking about this for years, but really nothing has been done to make it happen. And I think it would be important. There are some rules that I would get rid of the single point for the missed field goal and encourage the player in the end zone, if he can, to run it out without any risk at all of being tackled on the 1 yard line. In other words, the ball's going out to the 25 or the 35, regardless of what happens. The team that kicked the ball isn't going to get a point. The guy who catches the ball in the end zone should be trying to come out and run it back all the way for a touchdown. He can try and do that now, but the single point seems to me to be penalizing failure. I don't like 15 yards for a no yards call. It has fans going, "That's crazy." It was, he was only 12 yards away, and having that 15-yard penalty, if it applies, be as stringent as a roughing penalty. And I think the CFL has to consider first game back, if there are fans in the stands, whenever there are fans in the stands, being free. I think imagination is important, and I don't know that changing to you're going to cringe probably, but I don't know that changing to a metric field and going 4 downs for 10 meters is doing anything to alter the quality of play on the field, other than encourage more offense. And in its best days, the CFL has been a high-scoring league. So go ahead and argue with that one.
No. I'm fascinated that any changes to the CFL for you have strictly been limited to the field for the most part. And listen, I'm the guy that's been saying we should have become a farm league for the NFL 20 years ago. And I faced the firing squad 20 years ago before there even was a Twitter. But I don't think the problems with the CFL are on the field. I think the quality of play is high. I like the product. But I'm game for anything, because I think we're very close to becoming NFL Canada, in which case the field size would have to change immediately and probably 4 downs. But I'll swing something, though. I just think they're facing a perception problem. And I love the reporters, both ESPN's and TSN's version. I was crestfallen when it went away. You were the quarterback of it. And let me ask you the pressure of hosting that show, because when you talk CFL, we all picked up. And God knows Steve Simmons loved talking about it too. But did you feel that you didn't get much response? So it just seemed to dwindle as the years went along. Less and less and less CFL talk on that show and in the major networks in general in this country.
I'm going to be accused of talking too much to an Eastern audience or to a Toronto audience when we decided what the big topics were. Obviously, the time difference was a factor. Not many people watched us in Vancouver, and as the time changed, as the viewers awoke and moved east, it got better than out west. But You're quite right. I can't argue that the CFL wasn't covered extensively on the reporters. I think we always were looking for a big story that would have made the show regardless of what league it occurred in. And better if it's the CFL. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of, this offensive tackle being injured and the replacement not being able to protect the quarterback in a game coming up between Ottawa and Calgary, no, we didn't do that. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because in half an hour, we had to judge what were the biggest and most interesting stories in the sports world, and I'll underline world. Maybe there should have been a CFL reporters show, CFL exclusively reporters show on the CFL network. That might have made some sense, and I'd have been quite happy to do that.
Are you old school to the degree? I'm dying to ask you what you thought about Steve Simmons breaking the news of Auston Matthews' positive COVID status. Where did you fall on that? Because old school guys like me, I was okay with it. You would know Daryl Davis, I would think, here, Hall of Fame Rough Riders reporter from the Leader Post. He was in favor of it. A lot of people weren't. Did you have an opinion on that?
I hate when I don't have an opinion or when I have two, but I was a bit torn. There is a privacy issue when a player is at home or practicing on his own or working out or whatever. I would have said, obviously, it should have been reported if he had been in training camp or if the season was underway. I don't think the NHL did itself any good in not revealing positive cases during the season. I would have left it to the player to decide whether he wanted to tell the public why he wasn't in the lineup. And I think the player would have been respected for being truthful, and I guess might not have had a lot of support if he was telling stories that didn't sound believable. But in Auston Matthews' case, there was the privacy issue and there's some, whether it's a law or a health regulation or whatever, there is one on both sides of the border. They're different names that would protect his argument against the public revealing of his situation. And there's common sense that says he's Auston Matthews. He's a Toronto Maple Leaf. He is getting ready on his own for the season, and it is a matter of public interest. So if I'm forced to choose one or the other, yes, I would respect the freedom of Steve Simmons to report it. But I think there was at least a case to be made the other way.
Believe me, I completely understand it, and I'm sure you don't like having one foot on each side, but you've explained it very well. By the way, just before I let you go, how much time are you spending on the air these days? You obviously enjoy it. You getting a lot of invitations, or professionally, how's your life right now?
Well, I'm retired until I'm not. Would be the one sentence answer. It's an adjustment, obviously, and it's one that you have to deal with it. And there are days when you can deal with it better than the days when it's difficult. I'll sum it up by saying when the news is hot, when Kevin Cash is walking in the mound in the sixth inning, and to take out Blake Snell and Justin Turner is running out onto the field to celebrate with a COVID positive test on his beside his name, and everybody's arguing both sides of both of those issues. I want to talk about it, but my wife doesn't.
Well, You're like grapes, though. You got Twitter, which I could go.
My Twitter. If obviously, I'm going to assume you follow my Twitter.
Yeah.
It's strictly. First of all, I'm consumed by the U.S. Election. I'm allowed to do that. I hate this, from the U.S. What are you doing in Canada, talking about what's going on here? And I reply, I'm a citizen of the world, and replying as that, and not as a Canadian. But my Twitter entries are based on inspiration, if you want to call it that. Doesn't mean that you have to think, they're inspired. But I need something has to cross my mind, and I have to put it into a couple of sentences and think that somebody's going to get a giggle out of it or get a deeper thought than that. I think the last thing I did was to say, my only understanding of Donald Trump's legal position is that it's illegal to vote for Joe Biden. And people half laughed at that and half said, it kind of does look like that and come down to that.
Well,
So, I've heard this, stick to sports all the time. And I'm sorry, but some days I won't.
Well, as a guy that's been following your career since the 70s, I'll say this about your Twitter feed. It's you. And I don't think you'll make any apologies for it. But the next time you come on, I hope we can do that. I'd like you to talk about breaking in grapes as the original host you were for Coach's Corner. And I will just say this. At Sherlock Holmes in downtown Edmonton, 2012 World Juniors, I was calling the games on Sportsnet. Dave Moyer, statistician on Hockey Night in Canada, I think you know him, stood up and said, "You are exactly like Dave Hodge." And it was one of the greatest compliments of my life. I'm not sure it would be for you, Dave, but it was for me. So I just wanted to throw that along.
Where did that happen?
Sherlock Holmes, that restaurant in downtown Edmonton, right across from the Westin. You spent a day or two there? Time there?
I'm not going to argue with Dave Moyer's assessment of you or me. I'll just say that I said a lot of stupid things that Sherlock Holmes too. And you'd have felt better if it was over lunch at a classy restaurant, I think. But take it for whatever it's worth. And the name Dave Moyer brings back a lot of memories, and so does Sherlock Holmes. And I'll come back and talk anytime about anything. It's been my pleasure, and I wish you continued success. And I'll, the iPad is new, so I think I'm getting this technology. I might as well use it if I understand it.
It worked great, and I should add, it was after midnight, and I think it was the perfect scenario, time and place for Dave to say it. All right, Dave, thank you. Thank you for the time. Stay safe.
Enjoy being with you.
The iconic Dave Hodge joining us from his Toronto home.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.